My name is Evelyn Hart, 34, a structural designer who had been quietly paying my parents' mortgage for nearly 4 years. I didn't tell anyone. Not my friends, not my coworkers, not even myself, not honestly. I called it helping out, as if that softened the truth. The truth was simpler and heavier. Every month, without fail, I transferred a sum large enough to shape my own future into something smaller. They were celebrating their 28th wedding anniversary at an upscale waterfront restaurant in Charleston. White tablecloths, candlelight reflected on dark water, the kind of place where memories are staged carefully. I knew about the dinner weeks in advance. I wasn't invited. Mom said the restaurant had limited seating and that they wanted to keep it simple. Intimate. Just close family. I nodded into the phone, murmured understanding, even joked about being buried in deadlines anyway. I told myself it didn't matter. That illusion lasted until the evening of the dinner. I was sitting alone in my Portland apartment, rain tapping softly against the windows, when I opened social media. Maribel's post appeared immediately, as if the app itself wanted me to see it. Everyone was there. They stood around a long table glowing under warm amber lights, champagne glasses raised mid-toast. Mom and Dad at the center, smiling in that practiced way people smile when they know they're being photographed. Maribel leaned into Mom's shoulder, radiant, perfectly placed. The caption read, "Family only. Finally all together." My chest tightened. I reread the words as if repetition might change them. It didn't. My thumbs hovered over the screen, moving before my courage caught up with them. "Congratulations," I typed. "Mortgage and property taxes are officially your responsibility now." I hit send. 5 minutes later, the post vanished. 10 minutes after that, my phone began to vibrate non-stop, missed calls stacking like warnings. I didn't answer. I sat there in the dim light of my living room, phone glowing in my lap, realizing something sharper than anger. They hadn't forgotten me. They had excluded me. If you've ever felt like a stranger in your own family, you know how quiet that realization is. No explosion. No tears. Just the slow understanding that the door was never meant to open for you. It had always been this way. Maribel was the sun. I was the shadow that adjusted itself around her light. As children, she brought home crooked crayon drawings for Mother's Day, and Mom framed them like museum pieces. When I won first place at a regional engineering competition in high school, my certificate was folded into a drawer before dinner. Mom said she didn't want me getting a big head. I learned early what was celebrated and what was merely expected. That pattern followed us into adulthood. When the family car broke down, I wired money from my first salaried job. When Dad's medical bills piled up, I paid them quietly, pretending I didn't notice the absence of thank you calls. Every crisis came with a message. Not to ask how I was, only what I could fix. I told myself I helped because it was right. Because family helped family. But if I was honest, a part of me believed that one day they would see me differently. That one day I would be chosen without conditions. They never did. Maribel's life unraveled early. A fast marriage, a faster divorce, and then she was back in my parents' house with boxes of clothes and a wounded ego. Mom welcomed her like a hero returning from battle. "She's doing her best," Mom told the neighbors. When I visited that weekend, I offered to take Maribel out to dinner. She declined, said she was too tired. Later that night, I overheard Mom telling Dad that I didn't understand real struggle. Apparently, paying their bills from another state didn't count. Living in Portland became proof of my supposed coldness. Every missed family gathering turned into another story Mom told relatives. Evelyn's just too busy for family. The truth was simpler. Being close to them hurt. Dad, Henry, was a quiet man. He avoided conflict the way others avoided pain. When Mom criticized me, he'd murmur, "You know how your mother is," as if that excused everything. Once, after a tense holiday dinner, I asked him why he never spoke up for me. He stared at his plate and said, "Keeping the peace is easier than being right." That was the moment I understood that his silence was loyalty, to her, not to me. Years passed in a predictable rhythm. Calls that began with small talk and ended with requests. Roof repairs. Unexpected expenses. Just a little help. I gave because saying no felt like betrayal. It took too long to realize that they only called when something was broken. When everything was fine, I disappeared. Late at night, I scrolled through old photos. Maribel pressed against Mom. Dad beside them. Me, half-cropped, smiling politely from the edge. No malice. Just habit. I had become background. Reliable. Invisible. A week before the anniversary dinner, Mom called. Her voice was sweet in that careful way that always meant something unpleasant was coming. She spoke about work, about the weather, then mentioned finalizing seating arrangements. There were only so many seats, she said. Cousins confirmed late. Old friends too. She hoped I would understand. It wasn't personal. She loved me very much. I stared at my laptop screen as she spoke. The words didn't hurt immediately. They waited. I told her it was fine. She sounded relieved. An hour later, Maribel texted, "Don't take it personally." It wasn't comfort. It was confirmation. That evening, my coworker Lena noticed my silence. She didn't pry, just asked if I wanted coffee. At the cafe, after I told her everything, she stirred her cup and said calmly, "They only love the version of you that pays the bills." The sentence landed cleanly. Painful. True. "Stop fixing everything," she added. I didn't know how. That night, I ordered them a gift anyway. A small engraved photo frame, 28 years of love. I wrapped it carefully and mailed it the next morning. 3 days later, it came back. Inside was a note in Mom's handwriting, "We already have too much." The message was clear. So was my place. When the anniversary photo appeared online, white outfits, glowing smiles, family only, something inside me finally broke cleanly instead of bleeding slowly. I commented. They erased it. They called. I stayed silent. That was the last mortgage payment I ever sent. The night after the post disappeared, I didn't sleep. My phone lay face down on the kitchen table, vibrating every few minutes like a living thing that refused to be ignored. I recognized the rhythm of the calls, Mom first, then Maribel, then Dad's number flashing briefly before cutting off. I knew the order because it had always been the same. Mom spoke, Maribel defended, Dad stayed quiet. I let it ring. Outside, Portland's rain blurred the streetlights into streaks of gold and white. Inside, the apartment felt smaller than it ever had, as if the walls were leaning in, waiting for me to pick up and apologize for a crime I hadn't committed. Instead, I made tea. The kettle screamed, sharp and impatient, filling the silence with steam. My hands shook slightly as I poured the water, not from fear, but from something closer to exhaustion. 3 years of monthly payments. 3 years of swallowing disappointment. 3 years of telling myself it was temporary. That night, something finally snapped, not loudly, not dramatically, but cleanly. Like a thread pulled too tight for too long. I opened my banking app and canceled the automatic transfer. The screen asked if I was sure. I was. The next morning passed quietly. No calls. No messages. That silence almost fooled me into thinking they hadn't noticed. By the third day, the messages started again, but their tone had shifted. Mom's texts were polite, almost confused. The bank keeps calling. Is everything okay? An hour later. They say a payment was missed. Maybe it's a mistake. I read them without responding. Each word was carefully chosen, designed to sound innocent while carrying the weight of accusation. By Friday, Maribel joined in. Not privately, publicly. Her post appeared on my feed like a quiet weapon. Some people forget who was there for them when it mattered. No names. No details. Just implication. The comments filled quickly: sympathy, praise, validation. She replied to each one with heart emojis and crying faces, playing the role she had perfected over years: loyal daughter, wounded sister, victim of someone else's coldness. I closed the app. Ignoring them didn't stop reality from catching up. 3 days later, an envelope from the bank arrived in my mailbox. At first, I assumed the letter was a mistake. I hadn't lived in my parents' house for years, and aside from the payments I chose to send, I believed my financial ties were clean. The envelope felt heavier than it should have. Official. Deliberate. Inside, my name was printed in bold letters across the top. Borrower. Guarantor. My chest tightened. The letter wasn't about a missed payment. It was about a refinance. The numbers were unfamiliar, larger, riskier. The date stopped me cold. The refinance had been processed 2 months earlier. I hadn't signed anything. When I called the bank, the representative's voice was calm, practiced. The authorization matched prior records, he said. The signature was consistent. Consistent. Someone had reused my credentials, my saved authorization data, the access I had left open out of trust. The realization settled slowly, replacing shock with clarity. This wasn't an accident. It was a decision. I requested copies of everything: timestamps, access logs, digital signatures. When the documents arrived, the truth was undeniable. My email. My authorization. My name. That night, I spread the papers across my desk, each page another quiet confirmation of betrayal. There was no misunderstanding left to resolve, no conversation that could fix it. I hired an attorney. He didn't hesitate. "This is fraud," he said simply. "And it's provable." For the first time, the story stopped being emotional and started being factual. Evidence replaced guilt. Dates replaced memories. When Mom called again, her voice was sharp with accusation. "You're tearing this family apart," she said. I didn't argue. There was nothing left to explain. By early spring, the house was gone. Without my payments, and with the refinance under investigation, the mortgage collapsed quickly. The bank moved faster than emotion ever could. Notices were issued. Deadlines passed. Locks were changed. I drove past the house once, weeks later, on my way to file paperwork downtown. A red sticker marked the front window: bank owned. The garden Mom once obsessed over was overgrown, the porch light dark. It felt like looking at a place that had already disappeared. Maribel vanished from social media. Dad remained silent. Mom called once, long after everything was settled. "You didn't have to destroy us," she said. I didn't answer. I moved to Madison at the end of winter. The apartment was small, bright, and entirely mine. No shared accounts. No emergency calls. No expectations disguised as love. Each morning, I brewed coffee and watched snow melt along the parkway outside my window. The quiet felt unfamiliar at first, then comforting. When the final court decision arrived, it was brief and clinical. My name was removed. Liability reassigned. Fraud confirmed. I felt no triumph. Only relief. Some nights, I still thought about what I had lost. Not the house. Not the money. The idea of a family that chose me freely. But loss made room for something else. Peace. And for the first time in my life, it didn't cost me anything. If this story meant something to you, please like the video. It helps this channel reach more people who need to hear stories like this. Share it with someone who might relate or find comfort in it. And subscribe for more true-to-life stories about family, boundaries, and finding peace after difficult choices.